Happy Tuesday, everybody, and welcome into another edition of GC Live Talking Tuesday Nights. He's intern Joe. I'm Mike Yuva, and there's a lot to get into this week. Since the last time we spoke, South Carolina has climbed up to number 5 in this year's recruiting class. They've signed 3 more players. In addition to that, we have the NFL draft coming up this week, which we'll hit on towards the end. And then I also want to talk about the transfer portal for a minute, because over these next couple weeks, could be days as well, but over these next couple weeks, you're going to see teams adding players from the portal. And for some teams, I mean, shoot, I do want to, I know it has indirectly, it has nothing to do with South Carolina, with what's going on over at Colorado. But if you've been paying attention to college football, especially when it comes to the portal, it's hard not to pay attention to what's going on with Coach Prime and everything out there with Buffalo. So I say that because seeing how that's impacting college football, it's something I think it's key to bring up. With that being said, intern Joe, with that being said, let's start with what was a massive Wednesday last week. Massive. And we spoke about the impact the crowd had for those recruits. There were, I don't even remember the exact number. I just know it was friggin' probably the most recruits I've seen. Never mind the spring game. May have been for a game as well. The impact that had. Players didn't want to wait. They wanted to commit instantly. That has to make you feel good if you're part of that staff over there at South Carolina, seeing those 3 players commit last Wednesday, and all 3 of them were at the spring game a couple days prior.
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. I think, we're seeing what the crowd can do for the baseball team over at Founders Park, and we know what a difference it makes at spring games. And I mean, now that, the team is resurging, the fans are coming with it, and Beamer Ball and all that stuff. That's the one place, the crowd and the fans can actually make a difference is collegiate athletics. Right. In pro sports, they're already getting paid enough money and all that stuff and whatnot. And I guess, jersey sales, you can ding me on that. But I mean, I think, in collegiate athletics, it's really the only place that the fans have a direct impact on the success of their team. And that is by showing up for games, by showing that they care. And now with NIL, it's a different ball game with, supporting these student athletes and stuff like that. But it doesn't happen in pro sports where fans can actually impact, the success of their teams. And so I think, with how well the, attendance was at the spring game, 51,000 as compared to 50, which I absolutely loved. I think, it played a very, very big role for some of these guys. And I know it's playing a big role for a couple other guys that, haven't necessarily committed yet. I think it's a very big deal that the Gamecock fans showed up. And then the fact that, I feel like a lot of fans follow recruiting pretty well. And, they know some of these recruits. And like we had said, Mike, if you see a recruit, say, hey, come home and that kind of thing and treat them with respect and whatnot. But I feel like, when fans are able to do that and they're knowledgeable of, recruits and stuff like that, or even just, generally nice to them, I think that plays a big role in them feeling at home and wanting to come here for school for sure.
Well, you brought up something that I've heard from multiple recruits, especially in the class of 2024, just how knowledgeable this fan base is when it comes to recruiting. Now, of course, there's Gamecock Central, there's other recruiting websites out there, and this fan base pays attention, especially when it comes to football, but other sports as well. We saw women's basketball pick up a recruit yesterday. We've seen basketball, men's basketball. We know that Lamont Paris is trying to make a splash in the transfer portal. Colin Taylor and I did a video last week if you want to get up to speed of what South Carolina has been able to do so far, but they know what's going on here. They know what's going on. And to see players come here, and I've been doing interviews with some of the recent commits over the last couple days that will be coming out these next couple days. And that was one thing. I mean, you have offensive linemen, and they're saying, I mean, shoot, I walk in here and people are treating me as if I'm a freaking quarterback. I mean, but that's the case. That's the case with this fan base. They feel that. So, again, having that crowd there the other day, and you already are creating momentum from the standpoint of, okay, these coaches, a lot of them, as we start to take a look at some of those players, those 3 players that South Carolina was able to pick up last week, a pattern that you're noticing, even going back towards the 2023 class, a lot of these players, South Carolina was either the first school or one of the first schools to reach out to them and make an offer, or one of the first SEC schools to make an offer to them. Those relationships matter. No question about it. No question about it when Shane Beamer and his coaching staff visit an individual, visit a family, and they're telling them X, Y, Z. No question that makes an impact. But being able to come on campus, being able to experience a spring game, not even a freaking real game, a spring game, and you see all that. You see everything that this coaching staff, that the program, whether it be on social media, the tremendous job that Justin King and the recruiting department does, regardless of what they do, they're able to pitch all that, but these players are actually able to come on campus and see some of it. It speaks volumes. It makes a difference. And there's no question, the timing, it's not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence. So with that being said, I'm going to pull up some of the highlights of the guys here as we go down the list. And the first one's going to be Braden Lee. And the thing about Braden Lee, intern Joe, the first thing that stands out to me is the fact, well, he's from Maryland, which we can get into that in a little bit. But this kid makes plays. He makes things happen. He's a talented freaking player. And I think with South Carolina, when you look at what they've been able to do from a offensive line and defensive line standpoint, especially the O-line, being able to add talent in the secondary to be able to work with Torian Gray, this kid is so damn exciting to watch. He's physical, can make plays coming up in the tackling game. He's someone that South Carolina is going to really enjoy, and I think fans are going to enjoy because of the way he's physical at that corner position.
Yeah, Mike, I mean, we've seen the trend of defensive backs at South Carolina. I mean, Israel Mukuamu, Cam Smith, Darius Rush. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And so I think Braden Lee's a big get, and more primarily because he's from the state of Maryland. And we all know about one recruit that's also from the state of Maryland. But, I mean, Braden Lee, again, he's physical. He fits the bill. Kind of reminds me, after watching his tape, kind of reminds me a little bit of Cam Smith, kind of Nicky Manwari, if you want to compare him to a Gamecock. You know, very physical, plays with, his heart on his sleeve. And I'm impressed at his tape, and I'm glad, he is a Gamecock, and talk about a big Wednesday for South Carolina recruiting. I mean, he was a big one, and a big part of this class, and is going to continue the DBU, comparison or case for South Carolina going forward.
So he stands at just shy, or he stands at 6 feet tall. I mean, I say just shy because there's a couple guys that keep committing, and you lose track of some of the heights and weights here. 6 feet tall, 160, from that DMV area, as we just alluded to. Mm-hmm. He was also someone, though, that was getting recruited by some really big name schools. I mean, Maryland's right there, North Carolina, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Penn State, Tennessee, Miami, Texas A&M, Auburn, and Alabama. Rated as the 28th top cornerback in the nation. He's the 8th top prospect overall from the state of Maryland. So, again, as we're going to talk about with last Wednesday, all three of these guys committed last Wednesday. Second Maryland commit last Wednesday. Mm-hmm. And again, that's something I really want to hit on because I wrote a story last week, and intern Joe, we're going to get into that because I think it's so damn important with the timeline of how things are playing out. And if you're a Gamecock fan that remembers what took place on December 15th, 2021, National Signing Day. If you remember that date, it's going to continue to put a smile on your face when you see the pattern that we go down. But, continuing with Lee here for a moment, I like the idea. I like the idea of bringing someone in here that has the ability, again, the way college football is going, right? You're seeing more 4-2-5 defenses. You're seeing guys that can obviously defend the pass because that's where the game's going.
Mm-hmm.
But as you've mentioned with Israel Mukwamo, and of course that was part of the Will Muschamp regime, but you look at even guys during that era that were crossed over, and we were here when Torian Gray, first arrived under Beamer's staff. The guys play with this physicality that has helped this defense become the top in takeaways the last 2 years. You need a secondary that doesn't fold. You need a secondary that wants to friggin' hit. Not a lot of corners want to hit. Some of the guys just want to go out there and they just want to make interceptions. And there's nothing wrong with that, but having people that can freaking come up, they're not afraid to stick their head in there. That's the type of guys that Torian Gray likes having out there, even at that nickel spot as well.
Yeah, Mike, I mean, you talk about DBs, and a lot of times they get the label of, the stereotypical, how do my armbands look, and, signaling break up pass, like, oh no, when the ball flies or is overthrown like 10 yards. So it's nice to see a quarterback or a cornerback with a little bit of dog in him, and Braden Lee fits that bill. I'm really excited because of that factor. Just the fact that he can get to the football. He's got a nose for it. And I mean, he's not afraid to lower the shoulder. I mean, he's built like a top. I mean, he's very, his shoulders are, very broad, and he's able to, again, lay some people out. And that's fun too. Especially when you bring that tenacity on the edge. I think, it's something Cam Smith brought. And I'm glad Zachary brought that up. Cam loved to hit. Absolutely. And I think Cam fed off of it. And same thing with Braden Lee. He kind of seems like that kind of guy that, if you can lower your shoulder and make that kind of play, just blowing somebody up, it says a lot more than, the last second, like break up pass, like reaching back, breaking it up and whatnot. If you can lay somebody out, I think that, says more about you as a corner than, the breakup. It's a little bit more of an ooh-ah kind of play too. And again, I think Cam fed off of it. So I'm glad Zach brought that up because, it's big. I think when you have a cornerback like that, you can feed off of it. You can feed off of your own energy and keep you going in games. Because, again, at corner, Mike, I'm sure you know this, I can remember, when I did play, a couple snaps at corner, I would get a little bored, when the ball wasn't coming to me, and you kind of get lost a little bit if you kind of get what I'm saying. So when you're laying the lumber and you're able to hit a little bit, you can feed off of your own energy and keep yourself in the game, if that makes sense.
I think I know what you're trying to say, but a little different at the college level. Always doing something. Sure, always backside pursuing, intern Joe. Your coach is going to chew your ass out if you're playing the college game. These were staying with Maryland because we have another defensive back, Mike Williams. So we made the highlight. We make these videos every time a player commits. This is the 3-star offensive lineman, also from the state of Maryland. Poor Mike Williams, he sends me a message saying, hey, those highlights for me, they're from my sophomore year. Those were the only highlights available for us from his huddle. So big Mikey Williams, this is only sophomore highlights of him, which gives you just the sense of the fact that he can continue to grow. And he certainly did that his junior year. But again, these are the only highlights that we have right now. I want to pull up Mike Williams. Mike, offensive tackle, could also play some guard if needed. 6'5", 310, big guy, can move. Play the tape here for you. Again, this is Mike Williams.
In his sophomore
year. Mm-hmm. I think, again, we're going to continue to take a deeper look at the fact of South Carolina having success at Maryland. For those of you who are subscribers to Gamecock Central, you probably saw the story that I wrote, and it laid out every inch of what's took place going back to December of 2021. But
Brandon's got a good question about that, so we'll get to that.
And there's no question. There's no question that when you look at what South Carolina has been able to do already in Maryland, and I'm not saying specifically about Mike Williams, but again, it can't hurt. I mean, this is a guy that, some people get so caught up with the stars, right? 3-star, 4-star, 5-star. Mike is a guy that was getting recruited, and it still is, right? Can't make that official until early December. 6'5", 310 pounds. He's choose the Gamecocks over Miami, Virginia Tech, Michigan, and Southern Cal. 35th top overall prospect from the state of Maryland. And on Wednesday, he was the first to commit to this class. And you look at the connection, that pipeline, right?
It's big.
You look at that pipeline of what South Carolina has been able to do with picking up guys from that area. And with Mike Williams in particular, we talk about pipelines all the time, right?
Yep.
Same high school, Charles Herbert Flowers High School. Same high school as freshman edge Desmond Umeozulu. So you think of stuff like that, intern Joe. It doesn't hurt when you're able to already have someone here from the same school. That's great, obviously, but just from the same area as well. We saw that during the Steve Spurrier era with the state of Florida and how many Florida guys came up here. Now we're seeing it with Maryland. And to be able to pick this guy up, a very big get.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, we all know of the one guy that is still yet to commit from Maryland, that being,
Dylan Stewart.
Yep, Dylan Stewart, of course. Yep. So obviously, I was going to allude into it and give it a little suspense there a little bit. But no, Dylan Stewart being the one guy from Maryland, you want to recruit as many guys as you can from there. And we've talked about, again, the pipeline. It helps that Sterling Lucas, Dylan Stewart's main recruiter, coached at the Baltimore Ravens for many years. And I mean, there's so many different connections to the pipeline to Maryland. Beamer's father being at Virginia Tech, recruited that area quite a lot. And so I think the DMV to SC, obviously them being South Carolina being the closest, SEC school too as well. Like I made that drive not too long ago, Mike. Like it's not that bad of a drive. It's a quick 8 hours. It's not bad at all. 7.5 if you don't catch any traffic going into DC area and whatnot. And it also depends on what part of the DMV, but it's not bad at all. Like, I mean, it's not a bad drive. And again, like when you're pulling this many guys out of the state, other guys, they talk, Mike. I mean, they'll be at camps and they'll talk to each other, be like, oh yeah, hey, like, I was just down in South Carolina, the facilities were crazy kind of thing. And, Beamer treated me right. And obviously, again, I think it's huge when you're able to pull multiple guys out from one area. And it does establish that, traditional recruiting pipeline. And I think we're seeing one here.
We've mentioned it before with Shaq Wilson and how being at Florida and going to being from the state of Florida and going to a lot of those camps, you knew the other guy. You knew players. I'm trying to pull this up because this was from a story actually we did with Shaq. I think this is from last May. And I want to read a quote here because this is when he came on Marcus Lattimore and I, our podcast. And he said that class of 2027 saw 4 4-star recruits from Florida commit to South Carolina. And he went on to say, quote, I came here and got that offer my 11th grade year. A guy from my high school got offered and signed with South Carolina, Jameer Williams. He was big time, had offers from Ohio State, Florida, Florida State. Once you get around your guys and you come on those unofficial visits and then those official visits, you're like, okay, I can work with these dudes. Everybody from Florida, they were top guys. Everybody was winning in high school. I'm like, we got dudes and I want to win. I want to do it with them here. So I bring that up because there's truly something to be said about pipelines. In particular, when you go into a state that has had success, right? I mean, that's not saying like, a shot against like Maine or New Hampshire, or, states that aren't necessarily known for producing, talent like that, 4 stars. But there is something to be said when you go into an area like the DMV, an area where South Carolina, and again, I'll pull up the numbers in a little bit, but even going back to the Muschamp era, they weren't pulling guys out of that area often. They really weren't. Marshawn Lloyd, yeah, he was from the DMV, but you weren't getting those guys like you're doing right now, especially from the state of Maryland, which, again, we're going to dig much deeper into in a little bit. But I really, again, Maryland, I know we're hitting on that right now, but pay attention to that. Pay attention to the fact of where South Carolina continues to go. And as we mentioned with Williams, same high school as your new edge, Desmond Umeozulu, 4-star.
Yep.
There's a pattern. And Beamer and this staff started planting these seeds as soon as they arrived here, especially for this 2024 class.
Oh, yeah.
So a lot of them you're seeing now. And again, like I said, a lot of these players at South Carolina, they're bringing in, they were, again, interviewing some of the players that I've talked to over the last couple of weeks. Wendell Gregory, who we'll hear from, probably share that interview later this week. South Carolina, one of the first schools to offer him. He said that played a major role with him committing to USC. It's that consistency. But when you look at areas in particular, you start thinking like, man, this coaching staff, they have a plan, intern Joe, but they're going at it in a very tactical way where they're able to say, all right, we're going to get this guy, but man, we go right down, across the street from this high school in this state, there's a possibility of bringing in another 4-star. And those two guys might know each other. Hell, they might be friends.
Yep.
And we're seeing that play out right now. And again, so early, but as we're seeing right now with this recruiting class for 24, it's hard not to notice it and be like, man, this is playing out very well for them.
It is indeed. And again, you talk about like those two being teammates. You can only imagine what it's like for Des U to go back to school and obviously be freshly committed and stuff like that. And everyone's asking him how it is, how it was. And then he gets to be, the perfect example of a pitch for South Carolina. He's a walking billboard for it. And so I'm writing an article actually about that currently. Still working on my last interview, but should be coming out relatively soon about, how this 2024 class just recruits themselves, really. I mean, they're really, 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 really good at it. You see what Dante's done on Twitter. You see what Mazio's doing on Twitter. And it's just, I feel like what this class is setting as a precedent, it's fun to watch because they are recruiting themselves. It helps. And I think, to my knowledge and everything else I've seen around the SEC, this is the tightest knit group of recruits around the SEC. Like, you really don't get this anywhere else, and it plays into the whole family aspect, right? Like, Beamer preaches family all the time and welcome home, and that this is home and stuff like that. And so when you have a recruiting class that's this tight knit, I mean, it just, again, it's a walking billboard. It says everything it needs to about how tight this program is and how, great of a place this is and how much of a family it really is. And again, it's just, it speaks to the truth that it actually is that the coaches are preaching and everything. And that's everything that's in their recruiting pitch.
Well, intern Joe, that's a good transition right there to our next guy, because we talk about family. We talk about, okay, you can go out recruit in states like Maryland or wherever, right? Out of state. It speaks volumes when you have talent in this state and they want to stay home. They don't want to go elsewhere. And that certainly is the case with the third player South Carolina picked up last Wednesday, and that's Kelvin Hunter. What I really liked about Hunter, and I want to make sure that we have the right tape on him, because there's one play in particular that really stood out to me. Intern Joe, I want to see if we get the updated one. We're on his, okay, that's what it is. We have his, they have the sophomore one for him on his page. That wasn't the one that we included in the video. So let me bring up that tape, because there was something that really stood out to me about what he did with his, what stood out about his highlights. And it's not just the fact that he can play safety, but it's also the fact that he can make a big difference on special teams. So I want to make sure that we have that, and I'm showing the right one. Poor Mikey Williams over here. We're showing his sophomore tape, but that's the only tape that we have available. Make sure I have the right tape before we share this. All right, perfect. So again, this is Kelvin Hunter from West Florence. And notice his first two highlights that he has on this tape for his junior year. What do you notice? Special teams, right up through the middle. That's just effort. That's just effort. It's nothing. That's nothing more than that. Just effort. Just the guy running through. And while he didn't get blocked on that one, intern Joe,
Yep.
just seeing the form, the way that he's able to, his technique, going to the block point, little things like that, that from a high school standpoint, and you see more special teams, you don't spend, and I'm not trying to knock West Florence, but I'm going to take a guess, they don't spend that much time on special teams. I'm sure they practice a couple, just like every with high school football, right? But you don't have the time like you do in college. So a lot of that is just effort and going over the little technique things, right? You know, making your hand like a diamond, running through the block point, making sure that, you know, you're not running into the kicker when you go to the block point. It's just little things where he's proven in just those few clips. You can tell, you can learn a lot from a guy like that, not just about special teams, but that he's someone that is very sound when it comes to technique. And while there's going to be parts of his game from a defensive standpoint that you're going to have to continue to develop, I mean, look at that. I mean, even when he's wrong, as we would say, right? He's coming inside to stop the run. He gets right by going outside. I mean, there's just little things in his game that really stood out to me, but I really wanted to highlight that part about special teams because we know how important special teams is at South Carolina. And goodness, if you find someone like this, I think you're going to continue to see players like this from a recruiting standpoint that are going to come here. You're going to see them add highlights because they want to be part of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we saw how much buy-in. I mean, the starters, you know, it seemed like everyone wanted to play special teams for Pete Lembo and all that because that's where, you know, the plays are made. You know, they want to be the guy that blocks the kick and stuff and end up on SportsCenter and stuff like that. So I think that's huge. I mean, my opinion on Kelvin Hunter, I watched him play last summer. The kid is a freak athlete. He's been playing a little bit of edge and he's been playing safety. I like him better back at safety just, you know, because of his body and his athleticism. I think he will play safety. You know, I would assume so. He's a little bit bigger. That's kind of why they had him at edge. But, I mean, super, super talented athlete. Really, really good. And, again, you watch this clip here. I mean, look at that speed. It's ridiculous. You know, coming out from the second level to go chase down that quarterback in the backfield. It's
well, and there's little things too. There's little things too, intern Joe. And I don't want to necessarily turn this into a film sesh, but it's hard for me not to look at certain things because I'll tell you what, when you get to college, you're in a meeting with your positional coach, and Torian Gray is with all the defensive back coaches, watching how he plays this. Because I think some people, they're like, all right, you know, he's just running to the ball. Okay.
No.
We call it banana peeling when you come down here. Watch as if when he comes down here, watch how it's kind of like a banana peel, right? He goes down, but you're also arching. And I'm bringing that up just because I'm noticing things in he's a friggin' junior in this tape. Yep. He's doing things as a junior from a technique standpoint that's making me say, this kid gets it. And think about having those skills, right? Already demonstrating that, having that football IQ as a junior, which is a testament to his coaches over there at West Florence, who I don't know personally, but I mean, you don't just do this. You have to get coached up well, and it shows that he's very coachable. Imagine what's going to happen once he gets into a classroom with Torian Gray, and he's able to get coached up by one of the best defensive back coaches in the country. I mean, this kid has the talent. This kid has the effort that he demonstrates on special teams and on defense, and he uses his technique so soundly. I mean, it's the more I watch him, the more I get excited about this kid.
Yeah, you talk about a kid who loves ball too. I mean, he does lives, sleeps, eats football. It's kind of what I've gotten from him vibe-wise and whatnot. And again, insanely talented. You talked about the banana peel in that clip. I mean, his pursuit angle was elite too, because I mean they did break it out a little bit and switched up his pursuit angle too. Again, basic football stuff. I'm no college level cornerback or whatnot, but again, it's this kid loves ball. I'm really excited because, again, he's a freak of nature athletically. It's going to be fun to see what he can do his senior season. I'm sure the highlights are going to be all that and more. And then once he gets on campus, it's giddy up, go time. And I'm not sure if he'll early enroll, but if he does, I mean, it's going to be really, really, really fun to watch. He's one of those kids that has the potential. I mean, the ceiling is the roof with this kid, if you know what I mean. Like so much upside.
How many times are you going to say that every week now?
I love it.
Michael Jordan's going to come after you.
Yeah, I love it. It's one of my favorite things to say because the ceiling is the roof.
Thank you, Intern Joe, for clarifying that.
You're welcome.
Again, South Carolina wins those 3 players, moves them up now to number 5 in the recruiting class for 2024. The scary thing is, though, that they're not even close to being done. Not even close. The amount of players. You mentioned Dylan Stewart. He's still on the table. And I can tell you now that it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know this, but the fact that USC has had success, even going back to last year's class with Nicholas Harbor, but to add 2 more players from the DMV already for this year's class, it only helps South Carolina's chances that much more. Again, Maryland is a place where South Carolina historically, and I don't want to go all the way back to, like the 80s and 90s, but historically in recent years, let's put it that way, right? From a historical standpoint over the last 15 years or so, there's always outliers, but South Carolina hasn't had that type of success when it comes to that area. Now, Intern Joe, I wrote this last week for my Quick Slants piece, and I want to bring it up again because I think it's important. And I also think it's important because it shows what South Carolina is doing in the added motivation that they do have with Maryland. Now, you remember, and a lot of us remember, and if you don't, I'll get you caught up to speed. When Jayshaw Barham, 4-star linebacker from the state of Maryland, he was committed to South Carolina verbally. And according to Shane Beamer on National Signing Day, and I believe it was December 15th of 2021, he shared that the night before, Barham and his mother talked to Shane, and they're telling them how much they were looking forward to coming to South Carolina and how they found a home. And I'm paraphrasing, but this is pretty much what Shane said on that date. As we all know, what happens? Well, South Carolina finds out that he's going to be flipping to Maryland. A video comes out by Maryland, and it shows Maryland's head coach in a room full of coaches and personnel, and you hear the mother of that player say, we like hearing that better in terms of go Terps more than go Cox, as she said. You heard from Beamer that day. And I'm, sharing a quick quote. He said, quote, "You'd have to ask the young man that you're referring to," said Beamer, during a press conference held on National Signing Day in 2021. "I know I can't say that it's a surprise. When this particular young man committed on Saturday, about 10 minutes later, I got a phone call from somebody in the know up there and said, just so you know, it's all part of the plan. He's going to flip on Wednesday and go to Maryland. So I can't sit here and say that I was shocked when you're on the phone with the young man as recent, as late as 10:30, 11 o'clock last night, and he and his mom are telling you how they're so thankful and they found a home, how appreciative they are, blah, blah, blah." So I say all that, Intern Joe, okay? At the time, you could tell that pissed off Shane Beamer. And he was as classy as he could be about it, right?
Oh, yeah.
Try to be as classy as he could be. I shared in my story on Gamecock Central last week, okay? I shared from a source that I spoke with. They said, quote, "We weren't going to publicly talk about it, but amongst ourselves, it didn't sit right with us," one source told Gamecock Central. "It definitely added a spark because we felt like they were trying to clown our program and what we were trying to build here." So I say all that, Intern Joe, because since that moment, okay, since December 15th, South Carolina has landed 5 players from the state of Maryland. 4-star Braden Lee, 3-star offensive lineman Mike Williams, 4-star edge Desmond Umeozulu, 4-star offensive lineman Oluwatosin Babalade, and 3-star defensive back Zabari Sandy. You know how many players South Carolina landed from the state of Maryland before that moment? Take a guess. Under Beamer.
2.
0.
Yeah.
Go back to 2016 when Shane Beamer was there. Okay. So going back to the Will Muschamp era, 2016 now. How many players from the state of Maryland before December 15, 2021, how many players, even under Muschamp, how many players do you think committed to South Carolina from 2016 to that moment on December 15, 2021?
Settle.
Just one, Marshawn Lloyd in 2020.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot Lloyd was a DMV guy.
So the reason I'm bringing all of this up,
hold on, Mike, and not to mention, Dylan Stewart is a very hard South Carolina lean. I don't want to jinx anything, but he's a very hard South Carolina lean, as we can tell by his social media.
But
just wanted to get that out there.
The reason I'm saying all of this, because you look at the plan, right? You're looking at how South Carolina is going about it from a recruiting standpoint. You mentioned Dylan Stewart and how South Carolina is the favorite, according to our RPM on 3 to land him. That doesn't happen unless all this other stuff happens. It doesn't. I'm telling you right now. Dylan Stewart doesn't look at South Carolina like, oh, no one else remembers. I'm not saying that's the main reason, but it helps.
Oh, yeah.
So the fact that they've been able to do this, never mind the fact that South Carolina was able to pick up Nicholas Harbor last year, which, again, if we want to continue to go down that line, Braden Davis was the only other player from the DMV before that moment on December 15th to be committed to South Carolina, from the Beamer regime. But doesn't it just seem like it's just too obvious? And again, I'm not saying that's the only reason why South Carolina is going after that area, because there's talent there. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to know that. But don't you think it's a little too obvious to say, something else has to be there? There has to be some extra motivation for this coaching staff to go up there and land these guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's definitely some added motivation with that. The Loxley thing, and you can fill in the blank on what kind of a person he is. I'm not, because I don't know him. I don't necessarily know anything about him really, but I mean, I know there's been complaints at other schools and whatnot. So I think that's very on brand with everything that's happened at previous schools and stuff like that. The shady commitment and then the flip and everything and whatnot. But so it's tough. But again, I think, it's definitely got some oomph behind it. Obviously they're good players, and Dylan Stewart being one of those guys, and everybody. I mean, Braden Lee, Mike Williams, there's plenty of good players in the DMV, and Beamer and his staff are trying to get them all. It's also kind of hard for the rest of the SEC to, recruit, because again, they are so far away and whatnot. So it's been a really, really, really good recruiting effort from Beamer and his staff to the DMV, and there are a lot of SEC quality players in the DMV that need to be recruited and stuff like that. But no, I agree. I think there's a little bit of revenge aspect to it for against Maryland and Mike Loxley and his staff for sure.
And one other thing to add to that. So South Carolina, they currently sit at number 5 with recruiting. Maryland currently sits at 49. So you've seen things kind of just go the opposite direction since that moment. And of course, the recruiting class isn't complete yet. But I just think it's hard not to pay attention to that just a little bit, considering the fact of South Carolina's history in those recent years, going back to even when Muschamp was here, when it comes to recruiting that state. And it's also worth noting that USC's director of player personnel, Taylor Edwards, used to work at Maryland. So he also knows that area very, very well. And I think he's another individual that you can't overlook when it comes to just the knowledge that he has on the area as well. Intern Joe, I want to get into when you hop back on, I want to talk about the transfer portal. Because as we sit here today, Tuesday, April 25th, we have a couple more days left, end of the month, until the portal closes, okay, with players entering into the portal.
Yeah.
So with that being said, there's some players at South Carolina that I don't know how things are going to play out these next couple days, but those meetings have took place. Those meetings have took place, those end of the year meetings. And there could be a guy or two that decides to enter. By looking at Colton Gauthier's father post the other day saying, we finish what we start. I know there was probably a lot of fans that speculated, as to whether or not he looks like he's going to finish it. And I give Colton a lot of credit because he's on track to being able to graduate in December. So I say that because I know people are starting to get, okay, who should be the area, what are the areas that South Carolina wants to attack in the portal? We've kind of hit on it a little bit before. But is there any area in particular that you want to see South Carolina add depth at?
I mean, obviously, you want a little bit more depth at edge. You want maybe a little bit more depth at corner, depending on I've seen a couple not necessarily can't miss guys, but there's some pretty good guys. I know Prince Colley from Notre Dame. I'm a little biased because I've seen him play a lot. The kid's a dog. If you're looking for depth at linebacker, I'm not necessarily looking for depth at linebacker because you do have guys like Pup Howard waiting in the ranks, and we've seen the Nick Eamon-Warrior, what he's been able to do and that kind of thing. But I think you're pretty good at linebacker. If you wanted to go get one more stud, go get Prince Colley. But again, I think you need a little bit more depth at wide receiver. If you can, it doesn't hurt to have as many wide receivers as you can. Obviously, running back being a big one that everyone's looking forward to. I haven't really looked in the portal for running backs yet, but I'm sure there's some good ones out there that you can have fill the need, and so that'll I would assume they'll go after a running back, again, cornerback, linebacker, anything really defensively, but edge most importantly on the defensive side of the ball, and then obviously running back. I don't think they'll go get another offensive lineman, but I wouldn't also put it past them. Just because of you lost Vershawn Lee, if that's right, Vershawn Lee was the guy. Yep. So you lost Vershawn Lee. Nobody knows for how long.
Jalen Nichols is what you're talking about.
Jalen Nichols. Yeah, Vershawn Lee's healthy. Jalen Nichols in the spring game. So that's another guy. So I would assume you might want to go try and replace him in the lineup. I don't know if you're going to want to try to go get a starter, but you need another body for sure. So that's always up there. Tight end room is set. So, I mean, running back, offensive line, edge are the three main ones, but really you could go across the board. Depth never hurts anybody.
And I'm looking here, intern Joe, when it comes to, because I just saw the last one of the questions. Yeah. Where is it? South Carolina leading with any guys currently with the portal. We mentioned I think it was Washington or BYU linebacker. And then I'm looking at, because Tulsa, our offensive lineman, actually was just a week ago. Jaden Muskrat, that Wes Mitchell actually did a story about Gamecock stepped in. He wrote with an offer for the 6'3", 307-pound Muskrat, who was Tulsa's starting right tackle last season. Joining schools right now: Penn State, Auburn, Arkansas, California, Virginia Tech, Cincinnati, amongst others. So he was a 3-star prospect for the class of 2023. So there you go. I mean, and right now, I don't know who, from a portal standpoint, I don't know if South Carolina, they're contacting guys, but I don't know if they're the favorites to land some of these guys right now because they've been so focused on a lot of the high school guys. And they have the difference right now, intern Joe, with this year's group in comparison to last year and the year before, and we've talked about it before, they have so much young talent. They have so much depth. Now, that's not to say you can't bring a guy in with experience to put him out there and try to build depth that way or potentially even be a starter.
Yeah, that's true. I see Eli's question about how many scholarships are we sitting at. Mike, do you know the number?
I don't currently.
Yeah.
We can see if I can pull it up on Gamecock Central because we have our
sounds good.
The count. We have the counter. We can see if that's what that has.
Might as well pull it up. And I think I did watch a little bit of film on that Tulsa offensive lineman. I forgot we offered him because again, apologies, I have not been up to date with it as much because finals week and everything is here. I've been grinding, writing papers, all that fun stuff. But yeah, I think that's a good offer. Again, I did watch his tape a little bit last week when they did offer him. Kid looks the part, seems the part, all kinds of, nasty that you want on the offensive line. So excited about that. And again, like I said, you have to go about replacing Jalen Nichols. You're not sure what's going to happen with him. And again, hope prayers up for a speedy recovery from him, and maybe you get him back next year for his senior season or redshirt senior season. So I don't know, but I think it's good to go for the offensive line too. Like as much as you need running backs, you need guys that'll block for them.
Before we take a quick time out, intern Joe, just your overall thoughts. I don't know how much you've been paying attention to what's taking place at Colorado, but it's hard not to look at, because when you talk about this new era of college football, I think so many people want to look at it and be like, all right, something's going on at Colorado. Certainly there's something going on. I mean, if you've been paying attention to what Coach Prime has said over the last couple of weeks, this was on the verge of happening. This was on the verge. Now, there's going, as we've talked about many times with other subjects on this show, there's always going to be outliers. There's going to be guys that will enter the portal who maybe he didn't see coming, right? He didn't say, all right, there's a guy that was at Jackson State with him, transferred over, and now he's transferring out again. Did he see that one coming? Again, there's going to always be outliers. I do feel like, though, with what's taking place at Colorado, it's important to pay attention to. And the reason I say that is because what's going to happen, they have, I believe, the last I checked, 19 scholarship players returning from last season. I don't know the exact scholarship count they have as of today. It's more than that, but they have 19 returning from last season. There's going to be a ripple effect in college football. There's going to be players who will want to explore Colorado. And as we've mentioned before, the transfer portal, it's not closed yet.
Yeah.
It's not closed yet.
It's still wide open.
So, again, I'm not saying that, okay, anyone should, people should be worried about a player from South Carolina or two hopping into the portal. But anyone that's looking at Colorado and they're just like, oh, what a dumpster fire it is over there. I think it's too early to say that, number one. But number two, regardless, if you feel that way, there's going to be a ripple down. There's going to be a ripple effect, and it's going to impact college football.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, my opinion on Deion's whole thing is, I think this was expected. I kind of looked at the list that's in the portal from Colorado, and not to slight on any guys. I'm sure they're all good players, but he's not really losing any of the high-profile guys that he brought with him, right? They are all 3-star guys.
Even the guy that, even the receiver that went off in the game, I think he was a 2-star coming in, 2 or 3-star.
Yeah. So, and one of the guys I texted one of my buddies who goes to CU Boulder. One of them is like a traditional Colorado kid and was there through thick and thin, good person, all that stuff and whatnot. So I think Deion he called his shot too. It's quite, I would say, interesting in a way. Deion called his shot. He said this was going to happen. Plain and simple. He said guys were going to leave because, they didn't like the way he was doing things. And two, one thing I love from Deion, and I think, I don't know a whole lot of coaches that do this publicly, but one thing I saw was like on Twitter, he was very, very, he spoke well about some of the guys that were transferring out. Like he was like, hey, it's a good kid. Come get him. Like, we'd love, for you to come pick him up and stuff like that and whatnot. Like, I don't see a whole lot of coaches doing that on social media. And granted, I'm sure, not every bridge is
how authentic do you think that is, though?
I think it's pretty authentic. Yeah. Everything I've heard Deion say has been, very, very authentic. I don't think Deion really cares what other people think. So I take his word for what it is. And I mean, people gave him crap for the single parent household thing and the defensive lineman and everything. And I think he's just speaking his mind. If you want my opinion on Colorado football, I think Deion's going to do Deion. You're not going to stop him. And I think, the more that I see from Deion, the more that I'm liking and the more that, I like him as a coach and what he's doing for his players. And the more that I see, the more I'd want to go play for him. That's for sure.
So again, I haven't gone through the list of every single player. I mean, it's been tough to keep up with because it feels like every 2 minutes there's another player or two that's in the portal that's leaving Colorado. Is there a player that South Carolina might look at from that group? This obviously was a team that was 1-11 last year, but if South Carolina feels like there is a player that could make an impact somewhere, why not? So again, I say that because the portal is open for the rest of the month. And I'm not going to be shocked to see Colorado land some big time transfers over the next couple weeks and to see the wave of impact that it's going to have over the next couple weeks with teams. And could it impact in some shape, way, or form teams in the SEC? That's all I'm saying. And I don't think that's too crazy to think that. Carolina Rundown says, hey, Mike and Joe, first-time commenter, long-time listener, do y'all think Coach Prime will be successful at Colorado? What does success year one look like there? I think, at least with me, intern Joe, I think he will be successful. I don't know what this year will look like. And the reason why I think he's going to be successful is you look at what's going to be taking place in that conference. Southern Cal is going to be leaving. UCLA is going to be leaving. So the opportunity to win in that conference, yeah. I mean, it's not as deep when I'm talking about from a talent standpoint. If you look at the Power Five right now, right? Power Five conferences, and I don't even know if that'll be what it's called in a couple of years because of how much shakeup's going on in college football with these conferences. But calling it still a Power Five today, I feel like that's the easiest path to win a conference championship. And with the addition of playoff teams in the next couple of years, if you're able to stay afloat and just have a decent enough record, I think they're going to be able to do it. And I think it's important to pay attention to what's going on here because if Sanders is able to have success here, it's going to impact recruiting. It's going to impact what South Carolina does. It's going to impact what other teams do. It might not feel that way right now, but that's something I'd pay attention to. What you smiling? Look like you got a feather.
Nothing. I agree. Like it's kind of stupid how people are still doubting this man. Like you saw what he did at Jackson State, and yeah, the results aren't what you wanted, but you paid attention to HBCU football. That's what he got people to tune in. That's exactly what he said he was going to do. And at first. Dion to Colorado, I was not a fan of it, right? I'm like, all right.
Quick baseball update. Wake crushing Coastal.
Shocker, right? Wake's really, really good. But, I think it's Dion, like, I hate to say it, but he does everything he says he's going to do. And I'm scared for the day when Dion gets, I don't think Lincoln Riley's going to leave Southern Cal anytime soon, but when when Deion Sanders gets a Southern Cal job or, something like that, like a Michigan or I don't know, like, you guys can see what I'm saying here though. But like, it's crazy. It's, I really just, he speaks it into existence. It's like LeVar Ball, man. It's quite ridiculous.
Talking about speaking things into existence. That's like our friend Clint Hammond. He speaks into existence when you want to buy your new home. He helps you with that mortgage over at the Mortgage Network. Do exactly what our own Wes Mitchell, as well as former Gamecock captain Perry Orth did by giving him a call at 803-576-4450. He'll make that process a hell of a lot easier for you. And talking about making things easier for you, intern Joe, some people still have the extension for taxes. So tax season's not officially done yet for some people.
Yeah, Mike. I mean, if you do have that extension or have a little bit of tuning up to do on your taxes, call our people over at Taxiety. Taxiety is that
Liberty Tax intern
Liberty
Joe.
Tax. I'm sorry, it's finals week, Mike. Give me a break here, my guy. But yeah, no, Mike. Taxiety is an uncertain feeling you get right before doing your taxes, but you don't have to go through it alone. The tax team at Liberty Tax in Irmo, Lexington, and Columbia will walk you through the process, clear up any confusion, and guarantee you'll get the biggest possible refund or your money back. It's tax time. If you're in a hurry for your refund, call the tax team at Liberty Tax. Fast, accurate, and guaranteed. On the other hand, if you're thinking you might be owing Uncle Sam, talk to the Liberty Tax team to make sure you're not paying more than you should owe. They'll find every possible deduction for you. Locally owned and operated, staffed by tax professionals from your neighborhood. Open 9 to 9 on weekdays, 9 to 5 on Saturdays with multiple service options. Start the Liberty Tax mobile app or through the desktop portal. Make an appointment or just walk in. Give a call to upload your tax documents. When you come in, your return will be ready to review and sign. Give them a call at 803-462-5576. Once again, their number is 803-462-5576 for all of your tax needs.
Hey, we just got to make sure that the bills are being paid here. I mean, we're giving proper credit to our sponsors.
Proud of you.
All joking aside, intern Joe. Let's wrap it up, though, on this note. NFL draft begins on Thursday. There's a handful of South Carolina players who are on the verge of hearing their names called this weekend. There's guys who have, I mean, shoot, you look at back to a year ago, right? Darius Rush. You think of a guy like Nate Atkins, guys who were either, okay, maybe they'd make it into the NFL or make it, maybe no one's even considering them to play at that next level. I truly believe Nate Atkins is going to be the steal of this draft. I think Darius Rush will be up there as well. I'm interested to see how high Rush goes. I think Cam Smith, the way that he's been able to demonstrate that he can play nickel will help him. But I feel like he'll probably be either a late first, probably more so that a second round draft pick. But just your overall draft thoughts. Anyone in particular you're paying close attention to?
Yeah, I mean, I think Cam Smith is going to go higher than people think. I also think Darius Rush is going to be the steal. He's not very high on too many people's big boards, but I think that's another guy that could go higher. If Darius tends to slip, I mean, I know Darius's, work ethic. I mean, kids works his tail off. So, he's a big steal. Nate Atkins for sure. I hope to God he gets picked. And if he's an, undrafted free agent, he's a steal. I mean,
he's going to be a steal regardless. I mean, I just put a story out today between him, and then I also had a chance to catch up with Pat DeMarco, because obviously so many people make comparisons to him. And DeMarco even said, he's like, look, there's things that this guy does that I wasn't even as good at. And he talks about, in particular, his blocking and just how physical he is with his hands, and that it's very difficult to move him. He said that's something that he struggled with going back to coming out of college and going into the NFL. And of course, DeMarco, I mean, shoot, undrafted free agent, and then he ends up going on to have a 9-year NFL career. Out of anyone in that 2011 class that came out of USC that year, he had the longest NFL career. So I say that because his path from the day that he didn't get drafted to when his NFL career came to an end, it was a roller coaster. I mean, that first season, he had an injury and it set him back, but he was able to bounce back nicely. I think Nate's going to have a tremendous career because of special teams. I think that's the big thing. And then, and that's what DeMarco said. DeMarco feels like that special teams element of his game is what's really going to allow him to stick on with the team. And then from there, be able to demonstrate what he's able to do as a pass catcher. And then from a blocking standpoint, is he going to be a guy, as DeMarco said, that's going to be, pulling in 30, 40 receptions? No, he's not going to be doing that kind of stuff. That's not saying he can't catch a pass or two. But I think that one question I do want to ask you, intern Joe, kind of putting you on the spot because I didn't ask you this before.
Hit me.
Looking ahead to next year's draft, who's a player or two we should be paying attention to? The obvious is Juice Wells and Spencer Rattler. Put that aside. And who's the guy we're going to be talking about next year? Maybe even a surprise guy.
Does Jordan Birch count?
If you want to piss some people off, you can say that.
I think Jordan Birch is going to be pretty high up. He's one of my favorite South Carolina players since I've been here. So Birch obviously is going to be high up, and I haven't heard anything about the latest developments about his status here. So I mean, I'm not going to talk on it because I was told not to. But so Birch is definitely up there. I think, Tonka Hemingway might leave early. I mean, Boogie Huntley's up there. I don't know, defensive tackle wise. Kind of iffy. O'Donnell Fortune.
O'Donnell Fortune is the one that I'm thinking of. I mean, he's going into O'Donnell Fortune is a player that I feel like this time next season, I'm not going to go as far as to say that, like, all right, we're going to be talking about him the same way that we're talking about Darius Rush, but I feel like he's really going to skyrocket when it comes to draft stock. And I mean, that's a player that I'm extremely excited to watch next season. I think that's the player for me, intern Joe.
Yeah, OD Fortune, definitely, because, we've seen the potential. He's just kept improving. So I agree. I think he's one of those guys that could have a Darius Rush year if you will. So I'm excited for OD Fortune. And then I did want to bring up Zach Pickens for this year's draft as well. I think, he's kind of slept on a little bit. I think his talent, you get him in an NFL weight room and you get him practicing and working. I think, he could be kind of like an Ernest Jones in a way, kind of slept on in the draft and kind of work his way into the starting lineup and then just be one of those dudes for somebody. So I think, our guy, Zach Pickens, friend of the program.
Speed too. I mean, he demonstrated that speed out at the combine, and you mentioned Ernest. I mean, he was able to get drafted a little bit higher than I expected. And I think a lot of people were like, wait a minute, like, whoa, and then he made the most out of it, played a big role in the Rams Super Bowl run that season. And I mean, now he's heading into his third season and he's one of the top tacklers when it comes to linebackers in the NFL. He's done a really good job with it all. One other player too, I want to mention for next year's draft to pay attention to will be Nick Gargiulo. Because I mean, he can practically play any position on the offensive line. That's another guy I'd say. What we got here?
Hunter says, with the new rules by the NCAA, like running clock after first downs, do you see teams, including South Carolina, running a faster pace offense?
So,
yes,
I know we didn't get to see it in the spring game. I expect South Carolina's offense to be very fast paced, very fast paced. As far as this new rule, I think, in the short term, which I'm not a fan of. I think you got to go back to the 60s to find the last time that the clock ran. The early 60s, find the last time the clock ran in college football after a first down. Obviously, as we all know, you wait till the chains get set up, then the clock gets, you wind it up. This will affect every level of college football other than Division III. But I say all that because you look at the 2-minute drill. College coaches, intern Joe, they, for years, have been given a pass when it comes to time management.
Yep.
A lot of these coaches. And you see it in the NFL, how many coaches friggin' piss down their leg in those final 2 minutes? They don't know how to manage the clock. They don't know how to manage time. They don't know how to be able to clock management. So I say that because you're going to see it in the college level. Not looking forward to that. I'd rather the clock stop. I think it makes it a little bit more exciting, especially if a team's down by a couple scores late. Gives them a chance, kind of like a 3-pointer in college basketball, right? So I say all that. I say all that because with having Dow Loggins here, having Dow here, do you feel like South Carolina is at an advantage going into this season because he has experience of coaching at the NFL level when it comes to dealing with 2-minute drills and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, sure. I think it's all relative. Like, it's not, I don't think the running clock after first downs, it might be something that the head coach has to get used to a little bit with the timeouts and everything and just getting everyone there. But I think it's a little quick and it's just a quick fix. But ultimately, offense is going to be like a little bit more faster pace. And I think you will see that just kind of develop into the game and just kind of wrap itself into the game and stuff like that. But, I don't think it's going to be like, oh my gosh, everyone's running a Tennessee offense now. I don't think it's going to be like that. I think it's just going to be a natural, into the game. Mike, there was a question from Carolina Rundown. It's kind of fun. I wanted to bring it up.
No, we'll end on this one.
Absolutely. Mike and Joe, with presidential primary season underway, which coach of college football would you all vote to be or for to be president? I want to hear your answer first, Mike, before I go. I've got
and there's no political agenda or anything like that because
just good for the job.
This is just strictly saying who could do a good. I mean, at the end of the day, a president's always going to piss people off, right? You're not going to be able to be a people pleaser for everyone. Goodness, Saban would be a good one to me.
I mean, duh.
I could see Saban because
everyone's gonna say Saban though.
Well,
hit us in the chat. What do you guys think?
Well, the reason why I say Saban is because I would just watch strictly for the press conferences. Reporter asks a question and he's just like, and he just kind of just snaps back.
You need a press secretary to like chime in and say that's a bad question. He just snap at him.
All right, outside of Saban though. Yeah. Outside of Saban, I don't want to be like, all right, I'm going to say Shane Beamer just because we covered the Gamecocks. Let's put Beamer to the side.
Yep.
You know, I think he'd do a good job. But let's put Beamer to the side. Who's another coach?
I was going to say Marcus Freeman, but we're going to put that bias aside too. I think Marcus Freeman's very level-headed and whatnot. I mean, and I say that just because I've seen a lot of his, pressers and stuff like that. But putting my Notre Dame raising aside too, I'll put that aside with my Beamer bias as well. Coach Prime would be electric. I will say.
You know who would have been great? The great Mike Leach. Leach would have been
that's
fun.
what retweeter said. That's our guy. I met the retweeter at the baseball game on Saturday. Shout out to him. If you don't follow him on Twitter already, follow him. Unreal human being, does a lot for the Gamecock socials community. So it's I think Mike Leach is the answer here. But Coach Prime would be fun. I think that would be a good time. Oh God, who else? Lane Kiffin would be interesting. I feel like,
Lane Kiffin would be entertaining. You talk about entertaining press conferences.
Yeah. Kirby would be kind of boring. And Eli Drinkwitz.
How about Coach O?
Oh God, that'd be a disaster, dude. Absolute disaster. You couldn't. I mean, imagine him doing foreign relations. Go Tigers, yeah. Meeting with France. Yeah, no. I mean, I can't do Coach O impression. It's terrible. But I just can't imagine Coach O standing next to Emmanuel Macron of France. Ugh. But that, yeah. Trying to think who. I mean, Mike Leach. Trying to other entertainability. No, I mean Eli Drinkwitz would kind of be the boring take.
I'll end it on
Carolina
this.
Rundown said
we'll end it on this. How about Jamie Chadwell, former Coastal coach over at Liberty? He brings some entertainment to the table. He had the mullet for a while.
Mario Cristobal at Oregon.
Steve Spurrier.
Yeah, Spurrier's a good one.
And it's especially Spurrier in his prime. I mean, he could still get you with a couple of zingers today. I remember golfing with him 2 years ago at George Rogers golf tournament foundation event. He's still got some zingers in him. Could still freaking hit the ball very well too.
I'm sure, yeah.
Lou
Holtz. Lou Holtz. Yeah, that's a good one, Hunter.
All right, guys, we'll wrap it up here. Again, Gamecock baseball not playing a midweek game this week. They'll be back in action. It feels like it's been forever. What's my handicap? Yeah, my handicap is actually golf. That's my handicap for golf. It's golf. I mean, we got to work. I'm more of a bowler.
Not as good as mine.
I'm more of a bowler.
I've actually heard you're legit at bowling.
I appreciate that answer, Joe. Yeah. Gamecock baseball will be back in action with a Friday night game. It's been a while since they played a Friday night game at Founders Park. All these Thursday night games, they'll be taking on Auburn this weekend. A very winnable series for South Carolina. Auburn has struggled on the road. I think they're 3-9 heading into Founders Park this weekend. So they'll look to continue to find ways to climb and continue to do what they can to be able to get themselves a very, very nice seating. And I know for basketball content, we will have more basketball information this week. We did some stuff last week with Colin Taylor and I. I can tell you right now that BJ Mack hosting him this past week, it went very, 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 very well.
There's a couple of accounts on Twitter already claiming it's true. Not like legit ones.
I was I put it this way. I had my eyes physically on what was going on during one of the dinners with BJ the other night.
Where was it?
Beautiful place called Halls. Wrap it up. Appreciate you guys watching. We will do it again next Tuesday night.